Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a topic that, honestly, used to feel like it belonged strictly in science fiction, but is now deeply embedded in our everyday reality. We're talking about robotics. We're going to break down the actual mechanics behind these systems, taking a journey from the very foundational concepts of machine autonomy all the way up to the incredibly complex robots operating around us right now.
It's kind of wild to think that a field's entirely built on precise mathematics, coding, and super rigid engineering actually sprouted from human imagination. The word robotics itself wasn't cooked up in some sterile university lab. It was literally coined by the legendary science fiction author Isaac Asimov way back in 1942. It's this incredible blend of mid-century sci-fi dreaming and modern cutting-edge engineering. Essentially, we've spent the last 80 years trying to build the exact future Asimov imagined. Okay, so before we look at where this tech is heading, let's establish what makes a machine a true robot in the first place. Scientifically speaking, a robot is a mechanism or electronic device that performs functions ordinarily ascribed to human actions through automatic controls. It is all about that automation, the ability to operate completely independently without a human pulling every lever or inputting every single command. That is exactly what elevates a standard machine into a true robot. So here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with defining the modern robot, look at the anatomy of a system, track the evolution of robotics, explore categorizing real-world robots, and finally wrap up with future impacts and robot ethics. Let's jump right into the anatomy of a system, the core building blocks of a robot. Just like us, robots have a very specific anatomy. To achieve true autonomy, a system needs three distinct building blocks working in absolute instantaneous harmony. First, you have the mechanical block. Think of this as the physical bones and muscle, the parts that let the robot bend, move, and lift. Then you have the electronic block, which is essentially the nervous system, gathering critical data from the environment. And finally, the computational block. That's the brain. The real magic of robotics doesn't happen in just one of these blocks, right? It happens when complex algorithms instantly synthesize all that sensory data to execute a precise mechanical movement. Now, what's really fascinating here is how these blocks communicate. They do not exist in a vacuum. They operate in a continuous, high-speed feedback loop. The controller sends a command to the actuators to trigger a movement, but at the exact same time, the sensors are feeding real-time data back to the controller about that movement and the shifting environment around it. It's this constant, unrelenting cycle of action, perception, and adjustment. That feedback loop, it hinges entirely on the seamless teamwork between actuators and sensors. Actuators, which could be anything from electric motors to massive heavy-duty hydraulics, handle the physical grunt work. Sensors, on the other hand, provide the spatial awareness. We're talking vision, touch, temperature, and proximity. Listen, a machine can be infinitely strong, but without the perception provided by those sensors, it's basically flying blind. True autonomy absolutely requires movement and perception to be perfectly synced up. Moving right along to the evolution of robotics, from assembly lines to artificial intelligence. The leap we have made over the last century is just staggering. Back in the early 1900s, automation was entirely rigid. Think continuous assembly line machines that literally couldn't adapt to anything. By the 1940s, wartime pressures forced development into specialized military and industrial uses. But the real game changer hits in the 1970s. The invention of the microprocessor meant machines could finally be programmed with flexible software. And that skyrocketed us into the 2000s and today, where we aren't just programming specific tasks anymore. We are integrating artificial intelligence for deep space exploration and dynamic problem solving on the fly. We generally break this technological evolution down into four distinct generations. The first generation was all about primitive pick-and-place tasks. The second generation stepped it up by repeating actions recorded on magnetic tape. The third generation, which became commercially viable around 1981, brought us computer programmable systems. Though, to be fair, they were still largely blind to changing environments. But the fourth generation, this is the one we are building right now, and it's completely disruptive. By integrating AI and incredibly advanced sensors, these fourth-gen robots finally have the freedom to assess a dynamic situation and act entirely on their own. Now let's explore categorizing real-world robots, designing for form and function. So how do all these components actually manifest in the real world? Well, form always follows function. On one hand, we build anthropomorphic robots, machines created to look like us, with arms, legs, and a head. Why?
because they need to navigate infrastructure that was originally built for humans. But on the other hand, engineers constantly look to nature for inspiration, giving us bio-inspired animal-like robots. Think about it. A quadruped robot dog or a slithering mechanical snake can navigate a collapsed building or a super tight space way more efficiently than a bipedal humanoid ever could.
Beyond just the physical shape, extreme environments dictate some intense design constraints. Take a rugged military robot doing explosive disposal on a battlefield. That faces totally different challenges than, say, a space rover. Both absolutely require incredible durability, sure, but a rover has to survive cosmic radiation, wild temperature swings, and the harsh reality that there is zero physical maintenance available if a part snaps millions of miles from Earth.
At the end of the day, deploying these advanced systems is an exercise in managing trade-offs. The pros are huge. We get superhuman strength, pinpoint precision, and machines that can work 24/7 in toxic environments without breaking a sweat. But the cons are just as real. Despite costing millions of dollars to develop, these machines can still get completely stumped by an unexpected rock or a slight change in their environment. They have massive processing power for sure, but they still fundamentally lack basic human intuition and genuine creativity. Which brings us to our final section: future impacts and robot ethics, the intersection of man and machine. This is it. This is the million-dollar question keeping ethicists and computer scientists up at night. What actually happens when robots start making their own decisions? Because as we grant these fourth-generation machines more autonomy to learn and adapt, the line of accountability gets really blurry. If an autonomous machine makes a catastrophic mistake, who is responsible? The tension between keeping humans safe and pushing the boundaries of AI is, without a doubt, the defining technological challenge of our era.
To find a framework for all this, we actually have to circle right back to Isaac Asimov. His 3 laws of robotics are constantly cited as the foundational philosophical safeguard. Let's review them. Law 1, a robot may not injure a human being. Law 2, a robot must obey orders given by human beings unless it conflicts with the first law. And Law 3, a robot must protect its own existence as long as it doesn't break the first 2 laws. Now, these were originally just penned for a sci-fi novel, but today, they deeply influence how engineers tackle the incredibly complex challenge of hard-coding ethics into autonomous machines.
But even with ethical frameworks in place, the psychological impact of this rapid technological shift is hitting us hard. It's actually given rise to robophobia, a recognized anxiety disorder where a person has an intense fear of robots and automation. And while the clinical definition uses the word irrational, let's be honest, the underlying anxieties surrounding mass surveillance, societal restructuring, and widespread job displacement, those are very real, very valid reactions to a world that is just evolving way faster than our traditional systems can handle. So we're left with this ultimate crossroads. As we look at forecasts predicting unparalleled economic growth driven by automation, we are simultaneously staring down stark warnings of massive workforce displacement. Will the incredible technological rewards truly outweigh the deeply human costs? It is a complex equation, and there is no simple, hard-coded answer. It's a reality we are all going to have to navigate together in the coming decades. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.